Tonight on NewsWatch, fighting for life, a call for states to tighten the reins on abortion clinics.
We have lots of guns in Arizona. Just about everyone has guns here.
Plus, politicians demanding stricter gun laws after the Tucson tragedy. Hear reaction from cowboys in Tombstone, Arizona.
And a possible White House challenger in 2012. We sit down with GOP rising star Tim Pawlenty. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. Pro-life groups calling for tighter restrictions on abortion clinics. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lee Webb.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Their goal is to eventually shut the facilities down. In Virginia, the state's new legislative session is getting underway, and pro-life groups there are making sure lawmakers get the message. Charlene Israel has more in tonight's top story.
Despite the cold, pro-lifers united on the grounds of the state capitol for the cause of life.
There's not a more dangerous place in Virginia or the rest of the country than the womb, statistically speaking. And so it's really out of love that the people came here today.
Organizers of this Rally for Life want Virginia lawmakers to enact stricter rules and regulations on clinics that perform abortions in the state. In the past, Delegate Bob Marshall has introduced legislation that would hold abortion clinics to higher standards. He says now is the time to take action.
We've had almost 1.1 million children lose their lives. That's like 1/8 of the present population of Virginia. If not now, when?
If tougher regulations are put in place, many abortion clinics could be forced to shut down. That's because regulation would force abortion facilities to adhere to hospital-like standards and truthful reporting about complications. Pro-lifers believe that would save lives. But while they see regulations as a step in the right direction, they're adamant that their ultimate goal is to end abortion.
I don't think it's the total solution. I think we need to recognize them as human beings and stop killing them altogether.
We need to close them down. That's the ultimate goal. Stop abortion.
Abortion rights advocates say the regulations are a naked attempt to force abortion clinics out of business. Dr. Johnny Hunter of the group Life Education and Resource Network has been a champion of the pro-life cause in the Black community. He had this message for African Americans who have the highest number of abortions in the country.
And I know that God is so displeased with the number of blacks that are being aborted. But the group that could make the difference is the Black community and the Black pastors. If we don't stand up, then all the other children are going to be lost. And we were born for such a time as this.
When the rally ended, that's when the real work actually began, as the pro-lifers here headed over to the Capitol to encourage their lawmakers to take a stand for life.
We're going into the Capitol and we're going to talk to the people there and lobby for this regulation that we all need and that we all can benefit from.
Governor Bob McDonnell has said that he supports legislation that would increase regulations on abortion clinics and believes most Virginians want to see a reduction in the number of abortions in the state, something these pro-lifers want to see happen sooner rather than later. Charlene Israel, CBN News, Richmond, Virginia.
People on different sides of the world are suffering through some of the worst natural disasters in their histories. Flooding has devastated homes and businesses in Australia, and massive floods and mudslides have killed nearly 500 people in Brazil. Jennifer Wishon has the story.
These dramatic pictures tell the story of flooding that's creating deadly mudslides in Brazil. This woman, stranded on a rooftop with her dog, is rescued just in time. She's forced to drop her dog into the ferocious waters in order to hang onto the rope. Now rescue workers are bracing for more rain as they work to access areas isolated by rivers of mud. Nearly 500 people have been killed. Riverbanks collapsed as a month's worth of rainfall fell in just 24 hours outside of Rio de Janeiro. Thousands of residents have been stranded. Cars and trucks now rest atop or against buildings. Houses are leveled. Nearly 14,000 have been driven from their homes. This man says his house was swept away right underneath him and that it was God who saved him. Brazilians are using anything they can find to dig in hopes of finding loved ones still alive. Their efforts are mostly turning up bodies, but at this site, a joyous celebration as a baby is rescued. Thank God for saving them, he says. Dramatic rescues are also taking place in Australia after weeks of floodwaters have ravaged the nation's northeast. There, at least 26 are dead, more than 50 are missing.
Nature is a cruel beast.
As waters begin to recede, Aussies are getting their first look at the devastation. In the city of Brisbane, home to 2 million people, more than 30,000 homes and businesses were flooded.
It was well over my head. Yeah, up to there at least.
June Lynn's canoes around her house to inspect the damage. Not much can be saved.
I thought we'd be able to save some stuff here up on the desk. However, if you can quite see, the water's actually sort of gone up to around here. So even the computer, trying to think of saving that, it's going to be damaged as well.
As the Brisbane River returns to her banks, a nauseating stench of spoiled food and muck is permeating the city. And as Aussies and Brazilians mourn their dead, difficult months lie ahead as they work to rebuild their communities. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Now to the tragedy in Tucson, where mourners gathered today to pay their final respects to federal judge John Roll, one of the 6 victims killed in Saturday's shooting. Dozens of dignitaries and federal judges attended the funeral, including former Vice President Dan Quayle. Judge Roll was appointed to the bench by former President George H.W. Bush. A retired construction worker was also one of the 6 killed.
In his death, he gave the world an extreme example of heroism. Now his wounded wife is telling the world about a passionate man who loved God, his wife, and his church. Here's Paul Strand.
Mavie Stoddard was shot in the legs 5 times during the gunman's rampage Saturday in Tucson, but she very likely would have died if not for what her husband Dorwin did.
We both must have had the same idea. We need to get down, and we did, and he came down on top of me. He fell on top of me to save my life.
And he did.
Because that's who he was. Somehow I got out from under him and sat down flat on the concrete and held his head on my lap and talked to him, first telling him to hang in there, the ambulance was coming, but with that type of injury, it's probably better he didn't. I didn't realize I was shot till we got to Northwest Hospital.
Mavie's getting around with a walker, still in some pain, but she's been quick to forgive the gunman.
I don't give hate to this young man. He ruined a lot of lives, but he also ruined his own. I feel very, very sad and sorry for him.
Because of Dorwin, she's determined not to let this ruin her life.
I'll get through this. He gave his life for me. I have to live mine for him and make something more of it.
She and Dorwin had been 6th grade sweethearts.
I was the first girl he ever kissed. He had to improve for 50 years in order to get me.
That 50 years was spent drifting apart, having many children with other spouses whom they both lost. Then they found each other again 16 years ago.
I wouldn't kiss him because I didn't want to get married and I knew he wanted a wife. Finally, one day, he put a TV cabinet together for me and I felt I owed him a real kiss.
They wed 15 years ago, 15 joyful years.
He put me in fairyland and made me the princess.
Paul Strand, CBN News.
Wow, what a love story. Well, as the victims are being laid to rest, some politicians are calling for stricter gun control laws. Guns are ingrained in American history, especially in Arizona, which was once home to the Wild Wild West. Chuck Holton is in Tombstone, Arizona, with that story.
Saloons, stagecoaches, and shootouts all play an important part in Arizona's long history. And that's why even today you'll find the ethos of the Wild West permeates their culture. But if you talk to Arizonans, you'll find that they have very strong opinions about one thing in particular: gun control.
The mass shooting of 18 people at a Tucson Safeway is raising difficult questions across the state as pundits and politicians call for new gun control measures. But 45 minutes south of that city is the historic town of Tombstone, scene of another famous shooting 130 years ago at the OK Corral. Today, Tombstone is a tourist attraction where gunfights are reenacted every day. But recently, the actors rewrote the script here to help people understand that in circumstances like these, nobody comes out a winner. Stephen Keith is Tombstone's Doc Holliday.
What we do is make them real people with lives and girlfriends, and we show how quickly and abruptly that ended. You walk out of our show, you walk past the crime scene, the dead guys stay dead, they don't get up and walk away. You don't walk out there with a happy feeling and want to go play with Daddy's gun.
And despite the daily reminder of the seriousness of gun crime, Keith doesn't conclude that guns are the problem.
We have lots of guns in Arizona. Just about everyone has guns here. We don't have the kind of gun violence you have in a place like Washington, D.C. Now, down south in Mexico, you can't have a gun. And on the border, there's all kinds of gun violence going on right now.
Fellow reenactor Ken Barrett agrees. He's the former marshal of Tombstone and also has a Ph.D. in psychology.
Had he not had a gun, he could have gone to a home and garden store and gotten a machete. He could have used his vehicle and killed 40 people running them down in the parking lot. So to say that this event has anything to do with guns or gun laws is just that happened to be the instrumentality that he chose.
But what about people who don't have gunfights for a living?
I went out and bought more ammunition, and I bought another handgun.
Shirley Requard is a retired nurse and grandmother of 5.
Existing laws didn't stop that young man, and putting more laws on the books is not going to affect anybody who has a real desire to kill people. Arizona's history tells us that we take responsibility for ourselves. Personally, I cannot do anything about the bullet that has my name on it. But I know that I can do one heck of a lot about that bullet that's addressed to whom it may concern.
Chuck Holton, CBN News, Tombstone, Arizona.
Coming up, the Lebanese government collapse. What it means for Israel. Could war be on the horizon?
If you're an individual group or business needing a dental plan, Avia Dental offers group plans for as little as $5 per month. Now members of your group can save up to 50% or more off a high-quality dental care. Everyone qualifies, and there's no waiting or limits on visits to the dentist. Visit aviadental.com or call 1-888-431-CARE. Avia Dental since 1994. Smile, you're with people who care.
Hi, Anthony Sullivan here for ShaveMate. All-in-one razors, Titan for men, Diva for women. Simplify your shaving, simplify your life. ShaveMate razors combine 6 premium blades and thick, rich, real shaving cream right inside the handle. So you'll never have to deal with the mess of cans of shaving cream again. ShaveMate is the perfect shaving solution for home, the gym, a business trip, or vacation.
It's everything in this one little package. It's perfect.
You get a great shave every time. I think it's going to change the way everybody shaves.
Order right now, and I won't just double the value, I'll triple it, absolutely free. We'll even include our convenient shower hook. You get a total of 3 shave mates in your choice of Titan or Diva, and the shower hook, all for only $9.99. Here's how to order.
Order now. Call 1-800-655-8514 or go to ShaveMate.com. That's 1-800-655-8514 or go to ShaveMate.com.
If you're an individual group or business needing a dental plan, Avia Dental offers group plans for as little as $5 per month. Now members of your group can save up to 50% or more off a high-quality dental care. Everyone qualifies, and there's no waiting or limits on visits to the dentist. Visit aviadental.com or call 1-888-431-CARE. Avia Dental since 1994. Smile, you're with people who care.
Leaders and dignitaries from around the world gathered today to remember Richard Holbrooke. President Obama spoke at the service. Vice President Biden and the Pakistani president were also in attendance. Holbrooke was a top U.S. diplomat in the Clinton and Obama administrations. He is credited with helping in the war in Bosnia back in the 90s. Most recently, he was given the task of bringing peace to Afghanistan. He died last month at the age of 69.
Violent anti-government protests in Tunisia, Africa, have led to a change in power. Today, thousands of demonstrators mobbed the capital and forced out the country's president of 23 years. They are angry over soaring unemployment rates and government corruption. The prime minister is assuming control of the North African nation. The violent demonstrations forced the airports to close and thousands of tourists to be evacuated. Well, Israel is closely monitoring the government collapse in Lebanon.
The terrorist group Hezbollah orchestrated the collapse because they will likely be blamed for assassinating the country's former prime minister. The collapse could lead to more violence. Julie Stahl has that story now from Israel.
The Iranian-backed Hezbollah has tried to escape trouble in the past by shifting the focus to Israel.
And therefore, it exists as a potential they could do that by trying to heat up the border and turn the issue back into, or turn the attention back to a confrontation between Hezbollah and Israel, in which they can then pose as the resistance defenders of Lebanon.
But Middle East expert Jonathan Spire says the price could be too high to start a war now, even with the expected UN action.
It's a card that they have, but they'll think a long time before playing it.
Still, on his highly provocative visit to Lebanon in October, Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad traveled to a Hezbollah stronghold just 2 miles from the Israeli border. He told thousands of supporters the Zionists would not last long, should surrender, and go back to where they came from. The green tree line behind me is the Israel-Lebanon border. But on a recent visit to Lebanon, Ahmadinejad called it the Iranian border. It's been relatively quiet here for the last 4 years, but under the surface, Iran's proxy Hezbollah is preparing for war.
Over 150 Shiite villages and others in South Lebanon are being turned slowly, gradually but surely, into Hezbollah military camps.
In 2006, Hezbollah launched nearly 4,000 rockets at Israel, and the military response drove terror leader Hassan Nasrallah into hiding. But his absence hasn't stopped his followers from rebuilding the weapons stockpile by thousands of rockets and moving most of them toward the Israeli border. Israeli Army spokeswoman Avital Leibowitz says their tactics have changed. They've gone underground.
They have inside warehouses, a very big number of warehouses filled with rockets, Katyusha, missiles of all sort of ranges.
Spire says the next war will likely be much worse for both sides.
What we can say is that the Islamic Republic of Iran, and therefore its client Hezbollah, it's not new to anybody to say, is right now on a collision course effectively with the state of Israel.
Just when a war between Israel and Hezbollah will happen is unclear. But as Spire says, in the Middle East, if war looks likely to happen, it usually does. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Israel's northern border.
Up next, the man you could see more of as we near the presidential election. Meet possible GOP contender Tim Pawlenty.
The doctor came in. I was still waking up from anesthesia. He leaned over my bed and he said, "Laura, you have cancer." And he walked out of the room. The first thought is, what's going to happen to my children?
It's pretty rare for a person as young as me to get Hodgkin's disease. You would think, am I going to be here next year? Am I going to be able to spend more time with my family? And that was really hard.
The doctor says I would like to have his wife, his pastor, and his 2 best friends present. Then you know you're about to receive really bad news. There was very little hope given to us.
I just wanted this cancer out of me. I wanted to take care of it and move on.
We saw an ad on TV for Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and when I called them, I was very surprised that they were so quick to help us.
The second that we walked through the door, I knew that was the place that I wanted to be. If it wasn't for their kindness and giving, it would be unbearable to be able to go through something like that. And I honestly don't know how people who don't get that are able to handle it.
We were looking for medical care that would help us fight cancer, not manage it, but to actually fight it and beat it. And that's what we found.
Most people thought that that was a death sentence. I knew that I wanted to fight this. I knew I wasn't going to let that happen to me.
If you're a winner and you're a fighter and you're strong, you're going to stay that way. Your mental makeup, your attitude that you've taken your whole life with you, you're going to keep that attitude.
I said, let's just do it, and let me go on with my life.
Call now and we'll send you this free DVD that shows you how the most compassionate group of people anywhere puts you at the center of everything we do. Advanced medical treatment combined with unique supportive therapies give you treatment options you may not even know exist.
Cancer Treatment Centers of America is the way of the future. Patients are now taking control of their own healthcare destiny.
I truly wondered when he had cancer if I would ever get him back. Thanks to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I have my husband back.
Well, some familiar and not so familiar names are being tossed around as possible Republican challengers for the 2012 presidential race.
Yeah, one of them is Tim Pawlenty, the former governor of Minnesota, who says he's considering a run. David Brody spoke with Pawlenty and his wife Mary about their future.
His name isn't familiar, and even showing people a picture of Tim Pawlenty doesn't help.
No, is that Tim Geithner?
But people in Iowa and New Hampshire may know him better. That's because Pawlenty is spending time and money in those two key early primary states. But will he take the presidential plunge? Even his own daughter wants to know the answer.
She says, "Dad, are you going to run for president?" And I said, "I don't know, honey. I'm not sure." And she paused for a second and then said, "Well, just don't embarrass the family."
Tim Pawlenty is a homegrown original, born and raised right here in Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes. Actually, there are a lot more than 10,000 lakes, according to Tim Pawlenty. He says that's because Minnesotans are humble. They don't want to tell you about all the lakes they have. And that humble nature and that blue-collar work ethic is something that's defined Tim Pawlenty from the beginning. He grew up in the meatpacking town of South St. Paul and has known tough times.
When I was 16, my mom passed away of cancer pretty suddenly, and then not long after that, my dad lost his job for a while. And so there was a lot of concern and worry in my family. And I remember, first of all, praying fervently to God for help and for some confidence and strength and to try to help get through that.
And get through it he did by putting himself through school and becoming his family's only college graduate. Then came law school and an encounter with his future wife.
I thought he had this incredible voice, and I thought, oh, who is this guy? So I was wild about him right away.
Mine's more simple, David. She walked through the library and I thought, wow, she's hot.
Shortly after, life turned to politics, and Pawlenty eventually became the two-term governor of Minnesota. Recognized as a cost cutter, he's just one of 4 governors to get an A grade by the Cato Institute as a fiscal conservative. As for 2012, targeting Obamacare is likely to be his campaign centerpiece. As governor, he directed state agencies not to participate in any of the plan's discretionary benefits.
I think it's one of the worst pieces of legislation in the modern history of the country. It was a bait and switch tactic. They said they're going to make health care more affordable. In fact, they're going to make it more expensive.
Ultimately, Pawlenty hopes his regular guy persona will be an advantage. That's a big part of his new book, Courage to Stand.
He's someone who can connect with people who are blue collar, people who are really looking for someone whose life experience connects a bit more with theirs. So I think he reaches a cross-section of people that perhaps sometimes other candidates may not.
Well, thank you.
Veteran political reporters Jonathan Martin and Chris Liza talked about Pawlenty's chances recently on the Brody File.
I think you'd say he probably starts off in the middle with a solid chance to get in the top. He has the advantage of geography. Minnesota, of course, borders Iowa.
He may not be the kind of evangelical conservative in a Huckabee or a Palin way. He may not be kind of the businessman's conservative in a Romney way or even a Mitch Daniels way. But he can kind of fuse the two.
And evangelicals may be surprised at his faith background.
He's a Minnesota evangelical, Dave. I mean, in the South, people are a little more expressive about their faith in politics. In the upper Midwest, we're a little bit more reserved. He doesn't wear it on his sleeve, but he's very comfortable talking about it both publicly and privately.
Even in speeches, Pawlenty talks about how, first and foremost, God's in charge.
If the nation turns its back on God or tries to push him out of the equation, we're going to be a much poorer nation for it. We believe in Jesus Christ. We believe what Jesus taught is things that we not only believe in, but try our very best to follow. Jesus is who he says he is, and it's both simple but also profound.
I actually think this is an underrated part of the Pawlenty story, or if not underrated, undertold. My guess would be most people do not know this part about Tim Pawlenty, that he has a deep faith, that he has roots in the evangelical community. His wife, particularly well connected in the evangelical community.
The family attends Wooddale Church, one of the largest evangelical churches in the country.
My tradition was one of early on understanding the importance of a relationship with Jesus and understanding how important it is to intersect your life with your faith.
Presidential politics may be about to intersect into that equation as well, because it's near certain he'll get into the 2012 race, and he has the chance to be a real factor. David Brody, CBN News, in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Up next, how a technical glitch brings a stadium together and makes this little girl a YouTube superstar.
The doctor came in. I was still waking up from anesthesia. He leaned over my bed and he said, "Laura, you have cancer." And he walked out of the room. The first thought is, what's going to happen to my children?
It's pretty rare for a person as young as me to get Hodgkin's disease. Well, you would think, am I going to be here next year? Am I going to be able to spend more time with my family? And that was really hard.
The doctor says I would like to have his wife, his pastor, and his 2 best friends present. Then you know you're about to receive really bad news. There was very little hope given to us.
I just wanted this cancer out of me. I wanted to take care of it and move on.
We saw an ad on TV for Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and when I called them, I was very surprised that they were so quick to help us.
The second that we walked through the door, I knew that was the place that I wanted to be. If it wasn't for their kindness and giving, it would be unbearable to be able to go through something like that. And I honestly don't know how people who don't get that are able to handle it.
We were looking for medical care that would help us fight cancer, not manage it, but to actually fight it and beat it. And that's what we found.
Most people thought that that was a death sentence. I knew that I wanted to fight this. I knew I wasn't going to let that happen to me.
If you're a winner and you're a fighter and you're strong, you're going to stay that way. Your mental makeup, your attitude, that you've taken your whole life with you, you're going to keep that attitude.
I said, let's just do it, and let me go on with my life.
Call now and we'll send you this free DVD that shows you how the most compassionate group of people anywhere puts you at the center of everything we do. Advanced medical treatment combined with unique supportive therapies give you treatment options you may not even know exist.
Cancer Treatment Centers of America is the way of the future. Patients are now taking control of their own healthcare destiny.
I truly wondered when he had cancer if I would ever get him back. Thanks to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I have my husband back.
Well, a Virginia girl is now a YouTube superstar after a video of her singing the national anthem went viral.
Yeah, Mark Martin talked with the 8-year-old about all the attention.
The crystal clear soprano voice of 8-year-old Elizabeth Hughes rang out beautifully before the Admirals hockey game in Norfolk, Virginia. But about halfway through, the mic died. The supportive crowd joined in, helping Elizabeth finish the national anthem.
The show must go on. I didn't get to do my high note, and no one could probably hear me. I was really upset.
What's helped to cheer her up is a second chance. The Admirals have invited her to sing again next month. Another positive, all those YouTube hits, more than 2.6 million.
What do you want to do when you grow up?
I want to be a Broadway star.
Well, I think you're well on your way.
And what hockey fans didn't get to hear, Elizabeth sang for us.
O'er the land of the free.
Mark Martin, CBN News, Virginia Beach.
Ooh, had to take my IFB out for that high note.
That is terrific. She's a star already. I'll tell you, that's a great story.
Very serious young performer there.
Yeah.
But that's going to do it for this edition of NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.